had been in the entertainment industry, well, more so the performing industry. I had been on tour with Britney Spears and already had been kind of in the professional acrobat and aerial realm. But then moving to LA, really getting into the actual entertainment industry, I started, just being around everybody who looked perfect all the time. And people the knee-jerk assumption is to think that my insecurities came from not having legs, but it's it just was not my huge hang-up in life. And people kind of, through interviews, try to force it out of me like I'm just trying to be a motivational speaker or something, but that's just the truth. Had many other hang-ups, but not having legs was just not, it just wasn't the thing in life. It was there, it was a thing, but I knew it was God's purpose, and I moved on with my life.
New York Times best-selling author Jennifer Bricker is my guest today here on CIA, Contagious Influencers of America, from the producers of Keep the Faith. I'm David Sams. Jennifer is Jennifer. I call her Jen, but officially it's Jennifer. Jen is a good friend of mine. I met her a few years ago when I went to LA and I interviewed her for her book. Her book, which became a New York Times best-selling book, is called Everything is Possible: Finding the Faith and Courage to Follow Your Dreams. And it is a wonderful read. If you've not read it, you absolutely have to get it. Jen is so inspiring. She was born without legs, and she was placed for adoption by her parents. And that in itself is just an amazing story. This girl has more get up and go and more inspiration than anybody that I've ever met. And I'm telling you, she has just set the world on fire. She's an acrobat, an aerialist. She is, she was even years ago in the Britney Spears circus tour. And she was handicapped in high school. Of course, she was a tumbling champion. As a matter of fact, she was the first handicapped high school tumbling champion in the state of Illinois. Can you believe that? And she's been in the Junior Olympics, and she even won the U.S. Tumbling Association's Inspiration Award. But when you see her perform live, you're in absolute awe. And, she first came to mind, I saw her on a HBO special, I think, a documentary on her. And I'm like, I have got to have that woman on our show. The first time I met her, oh my gosh, she is just, she's so inspiring. It was just so much fun to sit down with her. And we've kept our friendship. I invited her to the Movie Guide Awards a couple years ago. When we used to get to go out to like award shows. I know we're getting back there, but I think I invited her, and she brought her friend. A couple, 3 years ago, and she's going to talk about getting married and her wedding. This is going to be just a cool podcast. So I can't wait for you to hear my interview with my good friend, Jen Bricker. Well, how's married life?
Hey, how are you? Married life in a pandemic is wild.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. So that's in a pandemic, living in a different country, being in a different country during the pandemic, and then moving back to your own country in the midst of craziness. So it's been wild.
Oh my gosh. I haven't even been on a plane in a year.
Well, I feel you. I'm used to multiple times a month traveling everywhere, all over the world and domestically. And this is the first time I've been grounded, I guess it's a double meaning, in, 9 years. I think it's the last time I can remember not flying this much.
Wow. I think the last time I saw you is when I invited you to the Movie Guide Awards. Was it?
Yes, that's right. That was the last time.
Was that 2 years, 3 years ago? 2 years ago? No, probably was
3 or 4.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, time flies, doesn't it? Oh, goodness.
Man, that's hard to believe.
So where are you today?
I'm in LA right now.
Oh, okay. LA.
Yeah, I know.
Lockdown Central.
That's right. The good old just restrictions and rules and hypocrisy.
Now, didn't you reach out to me recently about moving to Nashville? Was that you?
I did talk to you. Yeah, I
Oh,
asked you.
okay.
I just,
The reason I ask is because I had so many people from LA reach out to me in like the last 3 months going, we got to get out of here. Can we come to Nashville? Can we stay with you for a couple of days?
Yeah, there's been a mass exodus here for mainly it seems like everyone's going to either Nashville or Texas. Those are the two places that everybody seems to be fleeing to.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had a buddy here. He's the world's #1 voiceover artist. You would recognize his voice. He's been on NBC and all the networks at one time or another. He does all the movie trailers. And of course, he can now work from anywhere. He's so popular. And usually he's sitting in his place there on the South Coast in his shorts doing voiceovers for movie studios. So he decided, you know what? I'm going to now move to Texas. I'm going to do this from Texas. So it's happening over and over again. So what are you doing with yourself being grounded like this?
Well, so we were, like I said, we were in Austria. My husband is from Austria. So we were over there basically the first year of it was the first year of our marriage, give or take like a couple, I guess, the honeymoon month. And then, so about 11 and a half months. And he was working as a music teacher in a couple different music schools, and we were performing together, speaking together. Things were just like, it was crazy. We were doing so much over in Europe and Austria, Germany, Hungary, and all different places just when we were there. That wasn't expected, actually. And then the lockdown happened, and everything, just all the things I had lined up for this year or last year, like same story for everybody, everything got canceled. So I just didn't fly back to the US because there was no reason to fly back. So my trip ended up turning into a year, basically. And I wasn't planning on being there that long in Austria. So I spent the whole initial part of the lockdown in Austria. And then we came this whole time, he was working on getting his green card. So during that whole year process, we just thought, like, when the pandemic hit, we were like, oh my gosh, it's never going to happen. It's going to be delayed beyond delayed, with his green card. And actually the opposite happened. So it was actually went through months before, or months faster than we thought it would.
Wow.
So we had like extreme blessings, I mean, nothing in the government ever particularly moves fast, let alone in a worldwide shutdown. And we, like, through every obstacle, got miracle after miracle. And his interview in Vienna at the embassy just was like, 4 to 5 months sooner than we thought it would be. And then everything just flew by. And we were back in LA at the end of July, and everything was done with his green card process. So it was insane.
How did you two meet?
We met in Austria. I was on a little tour. My book, since it came out. So since then, it's now in 11 languages, which is amazing.
Wow, that's neat.
Yeah, it's really, really.
The first time we met, I came to your apartment there in LA, and it was right before your book came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was what, like 5 years ago, wasn't it? 2016.
It was 2016. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so one of the, of course, they speak German in Austria. And so I was doing this little speaking and book signing tour, and I was doing mainly the books in German, of course, for where I was. And he was at one of the events and bought a book, and I signed it. And it was just a super fast, like, buy a book, hi, take a picture, sign it. And he left, really fast. And 2 weeks after that, he sent me this long message on Facebook, which he laughs now because he's always embarrassed that it was Facebook, but he had no email, no phone, nothing, And he's like, I can't believe I sent you a message on Facebook. Oh my gosh, But it was a long, very, like, I'm like, this took him like 5 hours to write. So it was crazy, not normal. And he's like, I read the book and this and that, and kind of was explaining who he was. And I couldn't believe that I remembered him. I had 8 events in 2.5 weeks. So very busy throughout Austria and Italy. And I couldn't believe I actually remembered this guy. And it was like I just remembered just a snapshot of him. I remembered signing his book, and I remembered looking up at him. And that was it. That's all I remembered, but I remembered him. So we were both kind of surprised, actually, that I remembered him. And then it was slow. I mean, it was like just messaging back and forth, that turned into voice messaging, that turned into video chatting, and that turned into him flying to LA, actually for the first time even being in the US. So he flew to meet this girl he had met for like all of 90 seconds and flew to LA to the US for the first time by himself. And spent about 4.5 days here in LA, and then flew back, and we were just like, okay, what was that? What the heck are we going to do? We're on opposite sides of the pond here. And I had sworn to myself that I would stop dating men out of the country because it's too complicated. But like when you're always traveling in foreign countries, of course, the chances of meeting somebody who lives somewhere else is just going to happen. And that always happened to me. So here I am again, and I'm like breaking all my own rules. And we just kind of came to the conclusion that we had to meet each other again. So I flew over there because I had friends there. So I thought, well, it's not like I'm going to a country where I don't know anybody. I had really good friends that I could just stay with there if anything went like sideways with us. Mm-hmm. So I went over there, spent 2 weeks for New Year's Eve and then after. And then he flew back to LA, and then when I went back to Austria in March, this would have been of 2019, he proposed at the end of March. So it was very fast. And we got married that following July. So July 2019.
Oh, wow. What a love story.
Yep.
That's phenomenal.
Yep. Yeah. And really I don't want to say the bigger story, but yeah, the bigger or simultaneous story and all of that was also his faith story that was going simultaneously. So it was the first time he'd ever been to like what we would call just like a non-denominational normal church in America. Mm-hmm. When he came here the first time. And when he flew back, he had ordered his first Bible. So this is now 2018. Then when he, in between that period of me going to Austria and him flying back in February, he decided to get baptized. And when he flew back here in February, my pastor, now our pastor, baptized him in February 2019. And then now he's been in a pastoral program for the last year, almost 2 years. So crazy.
That is amazing. And I love to hear these stories where somebody actually gets a Bible for the first time. I mean, I've been raised with, I must have 47 Bibles in my house. It's like, you only need one, by the way. But so many of us have had Bibles around us since the day we were born. It's so cool to hear a story where the guy goes out and buys his first Bible. That's just amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah. I'm like you, I grew up in church and faith and everything, all these normal words and these normal phrases that we say in the Christian community, and marrying somebody who did not have that whatsoever. There was no norm. There was no norm of small groups. There was no norm of having a pastor, or having a men's group, or being raised with like, this is how a Christian man behaves, or this is how a Christian woman behaves. And it's really like fascinating. It's actually good. I think it's been good for me. It strengthened my faith because he understands the Bible like more than I do, which is also a testament to like how big God is. Like God, it doesn't matter how long you've known him or how short you've known him. He can just move however he wants. And that is so amazing. And I've got to see it firsthand. It's just really like mind blowing. It's really cool.
Well, I'm so happy for you. And one thing I want to do, because I've had you, of course, on the radio show many times, but never had you on the podcast. So, and the podcast has really taken off, and we're one of the top podcasts now in the spirituality section there on iHeartRadio. And
oh, hey.
Yeah, isn't that cool? And
Congrats.
take me back and take our listeners who are not familiar with your story. Take us back and give them a capsulized version of the story that you tell in your book, Everything is Possible. And I just want to hear it from you to them as opposed to me telling them.
Yeah, sure. So I was born with no legs, and I was left in the hospital, put up for adoption. And I, for the first 3 months, was in a foster home with really sweet foster parents, Nana and Papa is what we called them. And what I called them, I guess I wasn't speaking, but later in my life. And so in Southern Illinois, my parents, Sharon and Gerald, they had 3 boys and they were living their life. And my mom, though, she always wanted a baby girl, and she had 3 boys, and then she couldn't have kids anymore. And it's weird. Like, she just, in her bones, she said, I just knew that I was supposed to have a baby girl and 4 kids, even though she couldn't have kids after 3 kids and they were all boys. So she knew in her spirit. She didn't stop praying. She didn't give up hope. She just really knew it, obviously. And she didn't stop praying and believing. That's the key. Believing for 10 years that somehow, some way, she was going to have this baby girl. And one day she heard about a baby girl put up for adoption, no legs. And it was like this light bulb. I don't know. She just immediately, she's like, that's my girl. That's her. I mean, never saw a picture, nothing. She just heard about it from a friend of hers who was also looking to adopt a girl. And she just told my mom about it. Like, oh, I was, as I was looking, I heard about this baby girl born with no legs, and she's put up for adoption. And it's still, I mean, to this day, I think about it as I tell the story, and I'm like, did you guys ever even talk about adoption? And she's like, no, not really. And I'm like, that's kind of a big, to me, that was a deal breaker before Dominic and I were even dating. I'm like, are you okay with adopting kids? Not, then bye. This sort of kind of like, he's like, well, if I thought you could, and she's like, oh, good. I'm glad you agree with me. Like, she just was so determined. And then she calls the social worker and says, hey, we want this baby girl, the one with no legs, and still had not seen a picture of me. And then the social worker tells her, hey, just take the weekend, talk with your boys and your husband, and call us back, next week. So they sat my brothers down individually. And at the time, they were 10, 12, and 14 years old. And they started asking them, like, real life scenarios. How will it be in your life if you had a sister with no legs? How will it be with your friends? How will it be if you're dating? And what if people have a problem with her? Or, all these different just scenarios of things. And I still, this is something else I still can't believe. But at that age, 10, 12, 14-year-old teenage boys, they were sitting individually talking to my parents by themselves. And they all said the same thing. Literally, they all said the same thing. They said, if they have a problem with her, then I don't want them in my life anyway.
Wow.
How does that, how do you know how that happens? How do you go to bat for somebody who you've never met or seen a picture of?
Mm-hmm.
And so they obviously adopted me. They got me when I was 3 months old, and they raised me with this, it's not a motto. People think just never say can or everything, it's just a motto, but it's really a lifestyle. It's the way they taught me to just can't isn't part of your vocabulary. Mm-hmm. So that's a lifestyle. And what I mean by that is that when obstacles come, because they come for everybody, as we all definitely now well know, it's seeing the mountain and not being paralyzed or running away from it, but seeing the mountain and knowing and just believing, just right there, just believing that somehow, some way, I don't know when, but I can get over it, around it, or through it. That's when you lose or win the battle. And that's what taking can't out of your vocabulary does, in my opinion. And that's what they raised me with. And so they just let me do all the things: softball, basketball, volleyball, power tumbling, all against able-bodied athletes, no wheelchair, no prosthetics. nothing. I mean, it was just normal for me. And I was a natural athlete and I loved it. But they didn't discourage me, but encouraged me and spoke life into me. And those are the things that were the game changers, basically for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and what's really cool is you went and did all that stuff, and I remember you telling me how encouraging they were, and how your dad really, I mean, like the softball, for example. I mean, let's say you would have been in an accident years later and lost your legs. Your mindset probably would have been totally different than just, well, of course I can play softball without legs because you were born that way, right? I mean,
yes. Oh yeah, that's totally different things. I think that's, in my opinion, apples and oranges, because if you get in an accident and lose a limb or lose something that you had, you have to relearn it. It's just different. So I think you're right. I think that's two very different things.
It just goes to show the power of the mind. Mm-hmm. One reason I bring up that example is because so many people right now are just thinking, oh my gosh, I lost something I had. And I know so many people who've lost their jobs. I know so many people who've lost their, they've lost a car. I know people who are fighting to keep their homes or their apartment because, we've all been accustomed to what we had a year ago that we no longer have. Whereas a lot of people didn't have it in the first place. And I want to talk about that a little bit because there are a lot of folks out there right now who think, oh my gosh, you know what? I'm stuck. I'm in a hole. I'm in a rut and I'll never get out of this. Okay. Because they're coming from a place where they had it and now they don't have it. And I just want you to weigh in a little bit on that because in regards to your legs, you didn't have legs from the get-go, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not that you had to retrain yourself, but you had to think differently to begin with.
Well, that's a good point in light of what's going on right now. Because you're right, I didn't have to. It was normal for me, but I had to do in every sport. For example, I had to do things not very differently, but I had to do things differently in each sport. So for example, I had to, in softball in the beginning, because I was very young, they didn't know if I would be able to run fast or really maybe even at all. So they said, okay, hit the ball towards third base and it'll give you more time to get to first base. And so I started doing that, but then they saw that I looked like a Tasmanian devil running to first base. And so I didn't need to hit it to third base anymore. But in volleyball, I had a really hard time. So I had all the strength in the world, but I didn't have height. And so serving the ball was actually really hard because I had enough power to get it, for it to go, but to go and to go up higher, 3 feet higher, I had to swing than everybody else. And so I really had to work extra with my coach on things like that in each sport. And so I had to adapt. And that's exactly, I didn't realize that you connected that before my mind connected it, because I was going to talk about the situation right now, because I'm one of the people who, I've not been able to do what my whole career has been traveling the world, speaking and doing aerial performing for over 10 years. Mm-hmm. And that's been along with my book, of course, that's been my source of income for years. And that's also what I very much love and what God has most certainly called me to do. Definitely is not mine or by me. And so that's been very, very challenging in every way, just frustrating and disappointing and all the things. So I want people to know that I get it. I'm not speaking from theory or from like this kind of distanced apathy or whatever, it's like I'm in that boat. I've been there, I'm there. And I've gone through all the emotions too, because I'm not a robot. And I get it, I really, really get it. And the thing that really so I've been challenged, I've been refined in my faith. I mean, these are things that every single time I go through a hard time in my life, it's the same outcome. I'm like, wow, I really grew so much. That's great. That's amazing. But I fought the whole time and didn't want to hated it in the season every single time, because we do not like the uncomfortable. We do not like the unknown. We don't like when things are out of our control. We hate it. And that's kind of the whole point of having to rely on God for faith, and I'm talking to myself also. And so what I've really learned is, for let's say, like you were saying, you lose your job, you lose this or you lose that. It's definitely adapting in a way of, and I don't mean this kind of passive, let's just succumb to this horrible new way of whatever. No, I don't mean succumb. I mean to adapt to doing what God's will is for your life and still thrive in it. Mm-hmm, That's what God doesn't want us to just kind of get by and just kind of sink under and he doesn't want that. And I know, and I'm really talking I'm talking to myself as much as anybody else, but it's really if we can adapt and really dig in, first of all, asking what is his will. If you don't know his will, or if you already do, then figuring out how to adapt what it is that he's called you to do, because it's changed. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So for me, I have to change things. I can't fly to Hong Kong right now. I can't fly to, all these places because there's no event happening. There's no one to speak for or perform for, right? And so figuring out, but I didn't really like the idea of doing Zoom speeches because you can't have 300 people and then the Wi-Fi cuts out and then this, and then you don't get to interact with people, and it brings the whole quality of the level of my speech down to nothing, basically. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I can't give, you know what I mean? And so I was torn, and I'm like, man, God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And I think that I'm basically going to start my own subscription kind of base platform / channel where I put out weekly videos and interviews and all kinds of different things. And, that took a long time to come to that conclusion, but it was really the same things that we always know: daily in prayer and daily in the word. Those two things, I'm convinced, will solve everyone's problems. And they are very difficult because you're frustrated, you're angry, you're all the emotions. And that's in those moments when you have to quiet yourself, get away from everything and everyone, talk to God and listen to him. That's very challenging, but it's the only thing that I can guarantee that will work, that's consistent.
Now, see, what's really cool about that, I will tell you from my perspective over the last few months, the one thing that I have really appreciated, being here in Nashville, being I'm a single guy, I live alone, and the one thing I really appreciate, because at first I was going crazy. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna see anybody again. I'm not going out. I'm not, I'm stuck here. I started walking, and now the first few months I walked 1,500 miles. Now I'm walking 2,021 miles this year, and I never walked before. But here's something that's really cool that I've come to realize: the gift that I've been given, that God's given me over the past year. You know what that is? I've had no distractions. I haven't been traveling. I haven't been going out and seeing clients. I haven't been going to the radio stations. I haven't been going out on dates just to go out. I haven't gone to concerts. I haven't done, and it's given me so much focus. And what you just said to me about now you're going to start this online platform. Think about this. We're going to be out of this situation in a few months, right? Hopefully. We're going to be out of this and we're going to be on our merry way. You'll then be able to go out there and do all that traveling and everything else. But here you are with a personal life now. Here you are, trying to get to a whole new stage of life. And you know what you're going to realize? Thank you, God, for making me think about that online platform, because as much as I like to travel and do that kind of stuff, I also want to have this other life over here. And I want to do that other stuff when I want to do it, not because I have to do it, because you gave me the time to think through this online platform thing. I now have income coming through that pipeline, so I don't have to go out. I mean, I know guys that go out and gals that go out 300 dates a year, and now they're not doing it, and they're going, you know what? I didn't realize how great life was all along. Yeah, I've been able to spend all this time with my family, and I don't think I want to go out like that anymore on the road. Yeah, I'll go out from time to time. Yeah, I'll go out and do 30, 40, 50 dates, but do I need to be on the road, 200-300 dates a year? So, maybe for you, what this whole pandemic's going to do for you is give you balance.
That's awesome. That's like a really cool. I hadn't even thought of it that far ahead, but you're totally right. I mean, that's really.
I mean,
that's really awesome.
I mean, are you going to have a family at some point?
Yeah. I was just going to mention, at one point, of course, I want to have some kids.
Okay. Okay. Hello. So let's, and I suppose, you're still a youngster, but I mean, you're probably going to want to have kids in the next, I don't know, 3-4 years or something. Mm-hmm. I'm just guessing. Yep. I'm guessing. Okay. You can tell me to shut up anytime.
No. It's totally normal. Yeah.
Guess what? You have a baby, a beautiful baby. You're probably going to want to hang around the house for a while. You're not going to want to get on airplanes and go all over the place and drag the baby around. And what I'm trying to tell you is that we can look at the last year and go, oh my gosh. And by the way, those folks who have lost somebody, I can't even imagine. So that's a whole other realm. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just a whole other level. But if you're like yourself and myself, and we think, oh my gosh, yeah, we lost some income. Oh my gosh, we didn't get out there and we didn't get to do this or to do that or see these people or fly to this event or sell these books over here. Yeah, but look at the big gift that God gave us. He gave you the gift of vision to come up with this online thing. And by the way, I knew years ago when we first met, I thought you should do something like that, because when you go out and limit yourself to only do the few hundred people that are in front of you at any given time, now multiply that by thousands who can now have access to you on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And you and I, just coming from the TV side, I used to have to interview people. I wouldn't interview people unless I was right there with them. Like when I came out to see you at your place, there was a time that, hey, you know what? We either do it one-on-one or I don't do it. Now everybody's so used to this Skype thing and this Zoom thing, and folks are so used to the quality of it, even on major national networks. I don't know if anybody's ever going to come out of their house anymore and go to a TV studio to do an interview.
Oh, I love it still. I'm like, I still love being on all the TV shows. But
I know
a lot of people. I mean, it's definitely, I'm curious how it's going to change everything short term and long term, or, what changes that we'll have, what changes it won't have. So it'll be interesting to just kind of see how things unfold,
Let me ask you, looking over your life and realizing the obstacles that you've had to deal with, I want to talk about when you're faced with a roadblock, how you've been able to navigate around that roadblock. Because then again, there are a lot of people listening right now who are like, this whole pandemic has been nothing but a roadblock. It's like a detour. It's very aggravating when you're following Google Map or one of the other navigating systems, and you come up on an unexpected sign that says road closed, detour, and then all of a sudden you've got to make a left or right, and you got to go 20 miles out of your way to get someplace that should have been 2 miles away, right?
Yep.
And I just want you to talk to us about how you have over your life been able to face a roadblock and get around. What's been your recipe for that?
Well, I think every situation is just always different, because it's just totally different time and you're a different age and all that stuff, going on in your life. So, I would say one of the times that I remember being before all of this stuff, but the other time I remember being really, really, really challenging for a long time was in my mid 20s, and hadn't moved out here in LA. I hadn't been out here very long, and I was kind of I had been in the entertainment industry, well, more so the performing industry. I had been on tour with Britney Spears and already had been kind of in the professional acrobat and aerial realm. But then moving to LA, really getting into the actual entertainment industry, I started, just being around everybody who looked perfect all the time. And people the knee-jerk assumption is to think that my insecurities came from not having legs, but it's it just was not my huge hang up in life. And people kind of through interviews try to force it out of me like I'm just trying to be a motivational speaker or something, but that's just the truth. That many other hang-ups, but not having legs was just not, I don't know, it just wasn't the thing in life. It was there, it was a thing, but I knew it was God's purpose, and I moved on with my life. There were other things that got me, and what got me then in my mid-20s was the whole body image thing, and it became really body dysmorphia. So I got really, really thin. Then I got too thin. Then every time I looked in the mirror, I just thought I was fat. Like it's weird to explain out loud, but basically I would look in the mirror and I wasn't actually seeing reality. It was just all emotions and feelings. I felt fat, but that's not actually the reality. Was that I was thinner than I'd ever been in my life. I was wearing clothes that were smaller than I had ever even imagined being in my life. But yet in the mirror, I would pick myself apart and stand there for, way too long. And so it got to a point where I just, I wasn't going to like parties, like house parties or holiday parties because they'd have all this yummy food and I'd be tempted. So I just meet people at like cafes and get coffee and tea. And it really started to affect my whole life in that way. And just, of course, I wasn't happy either. I was just not shining or sparkling or anything like that. And so had to come to a point where I had to do multiple things. I had to do practical things and spiritual things. So practically, I had this huge floor to ceiling mirror in my room. And so I covered it all up with things that inspired me, just so that I wouldn't pick myself apart in the mirror. And I stopped that. I just broke the temptation because I took the temptation away. And then it was the spiritual aspect, like repeating out loud God's promises, God's truths, or just what God says about who we are as his children. And then it's choice. We all have a choice. We're not victims. We don't fall in circumstances. We are in circumstances in like that we can't control, like this whole shutdown. Yes. But how we handle it, that's our choice. That's what I mean. So at that point, I felt ugly every day. I felt like I didn't even want to look in the mirror. I felt like disgusting, every day. But I had to, at some point, take control and say, okay, I feel this way, but I have to choose that regardless of how I feel or my emotions, what they're telling me, because they're a lie and I know it, but it feels real. It feels completely 100% every cell in my body. It feels real, but it's an illusion. And it's stealing my joy. And also it's taking away God's purpose. Like it's taking away him being able to work through me to reach other people. And that's just selfish, So I started like calling myself out. I'm like, you know what? This is crap. Like, stop it. You have to get a hold of yourself. And I learned huge lessons in that time, because that's when I realized how powerful our emotions and our feelings can be, and how absolutely they are complete liars. And it is not, I let emotions and feelings rule and lead my life far too many years of my life. And I didn't know I was doing it, because everything and everyone tells us that that's what we should do. We're like programmed that way, by everything around us, media, magazines, whatever, social media now. And so I had to take ownership of that and really had to ask God to just heal me, and to kind of I had to rewire the way I thought and how I handled emotions and feelings, and that I took emotions and feelings out of the number one place in my life and put God there, even though I didn't consciously do it, but I did it anyway. I was still allowing the feelings to have more precedence and rule my life rather than the word of God. And that, man, wow. I mean, and it took a long time after. I mean, it didn't happen overnight. It took like probably 2 years to really kind of come out of that in a very healthy way. I think it could have been much faster. I think if I wasn't so stubborn half the time, it would have been, didn't have to be that long, you know? But that really taught me there are things that there's the spiritual element of it, which is always the foundation. That's always the most important part. So being in the Word, putting trust in Him more than ourselves or our feelings or our emotions. And then there are practical things. God also wants us to move and walk. And so then that was the part of for me in that instance, just covering up the mirrors and being like, okay, you know what? I'm just not going to take a picture right now because I know that I'm going to look at it and obsess about it and hate it. So there are things like, if you're an alcoholic, don't sit in a bar, right? Like, so we know these things and kind of safeguards for ourselves until we can get more healthy and balanced.
Jen, you're such a contagious influencer. Tell me what the number one thing is that resonates with folks when you go out and speak. What is the one story that they want to hear? What is the one thing that really seems to connect you to them?
Man, I have to say it's always different. That is the most fascinating part about how God works in my life. Just as an example, like I've, spoken in Japan and China and the Middle East and performed in all these places as well. And that's the most awesome part, is that when people will come up after a speech or even a performance, it's even more kind of amazing. Even when I don't speak, but I'm speaking, I guess, with my performance, people will come up and they will have, or have even read my book, same thing. They will have, let's say 5 people come up or 20 people come up, and there are sometimes 5 or 20 different responses to what stuck with them or what stood out to them. And what, and I've heard a lot of people talk and be moved by kind of the element of being put up for adoption, but not hating my biological family. So there's that element that really, I think people who have something in their lives where unforgiveness was really big, or hurt, or a sense of abandonment, that really touches a lot of people more than I just wasn't expecting that over the years as I've heard that. And then people, maybe as an overall one thing, is just people talk so much about my parents. I would say that's probably the number one. If there had to be a number one, people always mention my parents. Oh my gosh, I want to meet them. Oh my gosh, they sound like they're amazing. Oh my gosh, how did they do this? How did they do that? And the funny thing is that I think some people have fantasized and made this kind of, I don't know, utopian version of who my family is. And it's really funny because I'm telling you, they are the most salt of the earth, country, normal, down to earth, simple people. They are not scholarly, college, like academic kind of people. They didn't study or read books on how to raise me or anything like that. It was purely God. He saw their heart and He chose them to raise me. Like that, I can tell you. And that's what that's how that was.
You bring up the thing about your birth parents and giving you up for adoption. And for folks who have never met you, they don't know your story, they haven't heard me interview you on the radio show, tell them the story about how you met your sister.
Yeah. So I mentioned a little bit before about power tumbling, that I competed in that. And for those of you who don't know what power tumbling is, it's like in gymnastics, you have 4 events: bars, beam, vault, and floor. And so power tumbling is basically the floor part, but instead of it being a big square, it's more of a long runway with the same kind of rods or spring floor. Spring is a light term. It's not bouncy by any means. It's not concrete. So power tumbling is that. So it's a long runway strip, basically, and you do different sequences of routines, basically, where you do back handsprings, back flips, twists, things like that. And sometimes you'll do a series of, in the beginning, 2, and then all the way up to advanced 7 skills consecutively in each different pass or routine.
So this is the kind of stuff we see in the Olympics, right? Is it that sort of thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's similar. It's just not gymnastics. There are two separate, so power tumbling is separate from gymnastics,
Right.
but I think tumbling has been introduced now and trampoline as well into the Olympics.
There
I
you go.
think.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So basically that's what I was competing in for 4 years. And I was the first person with no legs to ever do that. Went to Junior Olympics, won state championship 1 year, won fourth in my division in Junior Olympics, which is the whole United States. So it was a pretty big deal for other people. For me at the time, I was just like doing what I do, loving what I do. And I always loved gymnastics. And I watched gymnastics on TV from as early as I can remember. And about almost the same time, I think, actually, I was in first grade. So I would have been like 7, I think, 6 or 7. And I was watching Olympics and watching gymnastics on TV like everybody did then, And I saw this one gymnast, Dominique Moceanu. And so I knew that my biological, like my blood, my biological family was Romanian. And I was always so proud of that. I always thought that was cool. And I saw Dominique on TV and I knew that she was Romanian, but she was for Team USA. And we looked very similar. And I thought that was so cool, especially because I was adopted, So like I didn't have anybody that looked like me, and that was extra cool for me. And also that she was Romanian, extra cool, And so I just gravitated toward her. I mean, just as a kid, for those simple reasons that, hey, we look alike. Hey, we're doing the sport that she's doing, a sport that I love. Because that's why I said simultaneously, it was like the same year I started my beginner tumbling classes that I kind of was exposed to who she was and then was watching gymnastics on TV. It kind of all happened about the same time. And it was just really cool time for me. And so she was who I liked more than anybody. I was just drawn to her. And fast forward several years, right before I turned 16 years old, my friend who was also adopted, she had just found out. I don't know why, actually. I don't know why she had just found out what her biological last name was, but she did for whatever reason. And, up until that point, so my parents were very honest, very open. They said about the adoption. So I always knew I was adopted from day one. I knew that my biological family was from Romania. I knew that they probably put me up for adoption because I didn't have legs. But that's just, my parents said, listen, they were raised under communism, with just in a different culture where people like you without legs are viewed very differently. And people who have children like that are viewed very differently, And so they just said, you don't really know what was going on in their life and don't hate them because this was God's plan. We prayed for you. You were our answered prayer. You were a miracle. And regardless of why they gave you up, this is how it was supposed to be. You were supposed to be with us. Like, end of story. You don't have to get caught up. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to be mad at them because they just knew in their hearts that this was God's plan. And it was so, at the time, I was just like, okay, whatever. I'm a kid, like whatever. But as I got older, I think it gave me freedom to never carry a chip on my shoulder about being put up for adoption, ever. So when my friend, back to 16 years old, almost 16, when she found out what her biological last name was, at that point, up until that point, I had never had I didn't feel a need to know about my biological family because my parents had told me so much. I mean, everything in my eyes. I'm like, well, they told me everything I need to know, and I didn't have a need, But at that moment, when she found out, there was just this, I don't know, I was like, well, I wonder what my biological last name would have been, just out of nowhere. And then I go home, even more surprising. And I asked my mom if there was anything she knew about my biological family that I didn't know about. And that's really bizarre because, like I just told you, they were so open and honest about everything from the very beginning. Why would I question what I believe God planted that thought in my head so that I would go home and ask? Because it's not in alignment with their character. It's not in alignment with how my childhood was. And so then I don't even know why I asked, but I'm certainly not expecting an answer, whatever, kind of rhetorical. And then she responds and she says, well, yes. And I'm like, what do you mean, yes? But you don't know what are you talking about? You don't know something about my biological family, what do you mean? And she's like, she goes in another room, comes back, brings this huge manila envelope full of all these papers, old papers. You could tell they had yellowed a bit. And she's like, well, you're never going to believe this, but your biological last name would have been Mochianu. And I'm like, what? Because that's not a common last name. So I immediately knew what that meant. Immediately. That the gymnast that I watched on TV, who I gravitated towards, who I felt like a connection with, was my biological sister.
Wow.
Like, that's crazy. That's
nuts.
That's nuts. That doesn't seem possible. It seems unfathomable, impossible, whatever, all of those things. And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, this is like a movie. This is unbelievable, but it's me. It's my life. This is happening. So, to make a long story short, I had basically two failed attempts, and the third and final attempt to contact, because I had a younger sister also, Christina. We were just under 2 years apart, so we're very close in age. And that I found out in my stalking, of online of everybody. And they grew up together. I was put up for adoption. And then I had 2 failed attempts of trying to contact them. My third one was successful at the very end of 2007. And then we all 3 met for the very first time in 2008 in Ohio.
Isn't that something? That's
Yeah.
Every time I hear that, I just get chills. And did you come to your wedding?
Yeah. Well, even more, it's funny you asked that. Even more amazing than my sister's coming to my wedding was that my biological mom was there.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
Yeah. As per my mom's request, my mom not only wanted her to be at the wedding, but she wanted her to walk down the aisle with my mom, arm in arm, and sit in the very front row with her and my dad.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. You know what? I really do want to interview your mom and dad.
Yeah, you should. You really should.
Really?
But you should go visit them. You should do your one-on-one. They would love that.
Yeah. Yeah. That is just so cool. I just love talking to you. You know that. And I'll tell you something I want to do. When you get this online thing figured out, what you want to do, okay, I want to help you get the word out. And I want to feature that, and I want to tell the world about that, not once, not twice, but on an ongoing basis on our show.
Wow. Thank you.
And we'll put something on the KeepTheFaith.com. Maybe what we should do is do some features with you to drive people to it. And that way, you don't have to start from scratch, so to speak. In getting people to go to it. I love to do that for you.
Wow. That means a lot. I really appreciate that. Thank you for even thinking of that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, you've been such an inspiration, and I've always loved you and loved your story and love all the inspiration that you bring to folks. And I'm just so happy for you, and I'm happy that you found the love of your life. And I'm sure you're going to have cute little kids. And
I hope so.
but you get that online thing up and running, or call me and we can talk about it. Off of the show here, and we'll figure it out. And we'll just go on every day or every week and just say, hey, you need a little pick me up, and Jen's got this thing figured out, and she can give you your daily inspiration, your daily devotion, whatever it is you're going to do, and we'll get the word out for you all across the country. Okay?
Wow. Thank you. That'll amazing.
That'll be my wedding gift for you. I'm a little late. I'm a little late, but
hey, it still counts. It totally still counts. Thank you very, very,
well,
very
thank
much.
you.
I really appreciate it.
And thank you for your time today, and we'll talk again soon, okay?
All right. Thank you guys so much.
And thank you, Jen. Thanks for hanging out with me. And folks, if you've not purchased Jen Bricker's book, please do so. You will be inspired. She will it's a great read. It's called Everything is Possible, Finding the Faith and Courage to Follow Your Dreams, and it's now available on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. I'm David Sams, and you've been listening to CIA, Contagious Influencers of America, the podcast from the producers of Keep the Faith. If you get a chance, check out our KeepTheFaith.com website. We are now putting all kinds of great content on there, including past shows. So you're going to hear music and stories that'll light up your day and give you hope and inspiration and contagious encouragement. Check it out at KeepTheFaith.com. And also, of course, you can listen to all of our episodes of CIA, Contagious Influencers of America, at contagiousInfluencers.com. Or if you had rather type in CIApodcast.com, you can do that too, and it'll just forward to Contagious Influencers. Remember to, if you would, to go out there and give us a good rating. Give us, wherever you get your podcast, please rate and review us and give us 5 stars and say a few kind words, because that really helps influence others to check out the podcast. It's amazing the impact that reviews happen to have on whether or not somebody's going to check out the podcast. So I would encourage you to do so. And please share this with a friend. We're here to inspire you. And there's somebody out there right now that you know who needs that little gift of hope. And hopefully we can give it to them right here. It's a perfect podcast to listen to while you're out on your walk. We try to give you something to really get fired up about. So please do consider that when you go out on your walk. I walk every day for basically 90 minutes, sometimes over 2 hours. I'm trying to get in close to 7-8 miles a day. Sometimes I get in 10, 12. One day I got in 14. And this is giving me a new lease on life. It's pretty cool. So that's what I do. I listen to podcasts. I love listening to the Bobby Bones podcast. It's a cut down of his radio show each day. That's pretty hilarious. That's one of my favorite. Of course, I listen to all kinds of podcasts. I don't listen to my own. I really don't like to listen to myself. I have fun doing it, but I don't have a good time listening to myself. So you can let me know how I'm doing, okay? Because I don't want to let myself know how I'm doing. I'm a producer. I've been a producer for way too many years, and I was a TV producer in Hollywood for almost 30 years. And so I'm used to being on the other side of the curtain. This in front of the mic thing is a kind of a new thing for me. I know I've been doing this for a couple of years, but it still feels a little foreign to me. And one thing I cannot stand is to listen to myself. I like listening to the interview sometimes. Hey, we're going to be doing something special here at the end of July. It's called Life Fest. It's a party with a purpose. That's right, Life Fest Music City. We are going to have this incredible music festival right here with some of your absolute favorite contemporary Christian artists. And that's coming to Music City the last week of July 2021. That's right. Thousands of people are going to be there. Hopefully we won't be wearing a mask. I don't think. I'm sure there'll be a few people still wearing a mask. Hopefully by then everybody that's going to get vaccinated will have been able to get the vaccine. I'm not getting in all that. The bottom line is that we're actually going to have a party of thousands of people and the old the Hideaway Farm. That was Johnny Cash's farm, and that's going to be last week of July. And you can learn more about it simply by going to KeepTheFaith.com and click on the Life Fest button, the Life Fest Music City button. And when you get your tickets, make sure you put the word faith in the promo code area for a special discount. I'm David Sams, and this has been CIA, Contagious Influencers of America, from the producers of Keep the Faith. Hey, it's almost that time of year, and I'm talking about summertime. We'll be there before you know it. We're just weeks away. We're in the spring and getting into summer here soon, and the trees are looking mighty fine, beautiful. The grass is a little greener, and there's a lot of color out there. And I want to encourage you. We've lived a year of lockdowns, shutdowns, shutouts. It's been a year of living in black and white. So I always tell you, go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living in black and white. And now more than ever, I mean it. So let's get out there. Hey, walk with me, okay? Walk with me every day. Just bring along your phone and your earbuds and or your headphones and listen to this podcast, and just know that I'm out there walking with you. I'm out there doing my 90 minutes to 2 hours with you. Let's reinvent ourselves, okay? Let's reinvent ourselves and our minds and our attitudes, and make the rest of 2021 a coming out party. That could be a lot of fun. And do consider coming to check us out and see me. I'll be at Life Fest along with all of our folks, our entire crew. So please come and check it out at the end of July. All right. Well, that's it for this time around. And thank you, Jennifer, for hanging out with me. Really cool, even though it was via Skype. Hey, you get what you can get, right? I can't wait to see her in person, though. I haven't been in L.A. for over a year, and that's really unusual. I'm usually in L.A. about every 6 weeks or so, and I have not been to L.A. in over a year, and I hope to get back there real soon. And Jennifer, if you're listening, let's get together, because I want to meet your new husband, okay? Well, it's not like you've had more than one, but I want to meet your husband. Okay, so let's do that. I'll pick up the check. All right. We'll see you next time here on CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. So long.